My wife cheated on me with my father, but now she's trying to come back. A surprise awaits her. Hey, I'm Rick, 32. 2 years ago, my perfect life, gone. Wiped out in one night. It's almost funny how fast things can go from Netflix and chill to your wife and your dad. Yeah, they're a thing. It started on a Tuesday. Melissa, my wife, was giggling over her phone like a teenager. Curious, I asked, "What's so funny?" She practically jumped out of her skin and muttered, "Work stuff." Right, because freelance deadlines are hilarious. When she left the room, I took a look. Call it instinct or bad luck. One name stood out in her texts. Greg, my dad. I scrolled. At first, it looked innocent. Then I hit the real messages. Flirty jokes, explicit details. My dad even called her forbidden fruit. Disgusting. My stomach churned. I screenshotted everything. I needed proof. For what? I didn't know yet. Fast forward, family dinner on Friday. My mom's lasagna couldn't save the tension. Greg and Melissa were all smiles, pretending like nothing happened. I snapped. "Melissa, how's Greg? You two seemed close." Forks hit plates. My mom froze. Greg coughed. "Melissa? Deer in headlights. What's that supposed to mean?" Greg asked, his voice too calm. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe stop sexting my wife, Dad." Chaos. Melissa cried, Greg stammered about a moment of weakness, and my mom kept whispering, "Greg, tell me this isn't true." I stormed out, leaving their perfect dinner in shambles. Turns out, lasagna tastes terrible when seasoned with betrayal. Let me paint the picture. After the absolute circus of a family dinner where my wife and my dad were outed as the world's worst duo, Melissa moved out that very night. Not gonna lie, the house felt quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like the calm after a hurricane wrecks everything you care about. The kind of silence that makes you want to scream into a pillow just to feel something. Greg, my dear father, called me the next morning. "Rick, we need to talk. This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, really, Greg?" Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my dad decided to audition for the role of homewrecker of the year. I hung up before he could spew more nonsense. Cutting ties with him? Easiest decision of my life. The guy was dead to me. Divorce papers, signed, sealed, delivered. Melissa could have them gift-wrapped for all I cared. The betrayal wasn't just a knife in my back. It was a chainsaw. And they didn't even bother to clean up the mess. Trust? Gone. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror without hearing Greg's slimy excuses or seeing Melissa's crocodile tears. Speaking of Melissa, she went full stalker mode. Texts, voicemails, even emails like it's 2000. "Rick, I'm sorry. It was a mistake. Please, we can fix this." "Sure, Melissa, let me just slap a Band-Aid on my shattered soul. That'll fix everything." Every message felt like salt in the wound. Delete, block, repeat. And Greg? Oh, he wasn't done. The man started recruiting family members to talk some sense into me. My aunt called, claiming Greg was deeply sorry and deserved forgiveness. Lady, he doesn't deserve forgiveness. He deserves a restraining order and maybe a lifetime ban from family gatherings. Every call ended the same. "Greg's your father, Rick. Family is everything." Yeah? Then why did he act like family meant nothing? I'll admit, I hit rock bottom. Therapy became my new best friend. "Let it out," my therapist said. Oh, I let it out all right. Weeks of venting, crying, and sarcastic monologues about my soap opera life. It helped, though. Slowly, the numbness started to lift. Turns out, putting the pieces of yourself back together takes time and a hell of a lot of effort. But hey, at least now I could laugh about it. Sometimes. Because if I didn't, I'd cry. And trust me, I was running out of tissues. Let me tell you, depression isn't just feeling sad. It's like someone vacuumed your soul, left you empty, and then ran over you with a truck for good measure. After the whole dad and wife betrayal special, I wasn't just down. I was in free fall. Work? Forget it. My emails piled up like dirty laundry, and every meeting felt like a marathon I didn't train for. Even my friends, who should have been my lifeline, turned into, well, I don't even know what. Some tried the whole, "let's go out, bro" routine, like hitting a bar would magically make me forget my wife and dad were a thing. Others, total radio silence. And then there were the ones who straight up picked sides. Melissa's crew called me bitter. Duh. And Greg's defenders were all, he's family, Rick. Give him a break. Sure, I'll give him a break. Right over my knee like a piece of rotten firewood. The cherry on top? One day, I'm sitting at work, minding my own miserable business, when I overhear two colleagues whispering, "Did you hear about Rick? Something about his wife and his dad? So awkward." Awkward? Try devastating. I wanted to crawl under my desk and live there forever. Instead, I plastered on a fake smile and walked past them like I hadn't just heard my entire life reduced to water cooler gossip. Spoiler, it didn't feel good. Honestly, the only thing keeping me from totally losing it was my therapist, Dr. Harper. She was the kind of person who could make you believe that turning your life into a self-help project was a good idea. Channel the pain into growth, not revenge, she'd say. Sounds noble, right? Except when all you want is revenge. Sweet, satisfying revenge. But I tried. I started journaling, mostly angry rants. But hey, it's growth, right? I signed up for a boxing class, which was great for imagining Greg's face on the punching bag. And little by little, I started feeling less like a crushed soda can and more like, well, a dented one. Progress. Depression doesn't just go away. It clings to you, whispers in your ear when you're trying to sleep. But thanks to Dr. Harper and a hell of a lot of sarcasm, I was starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel, even if it still felt a million miles away. You know that moment in a movie where the protagonist stands in the rain, dramatically staring off into the distance as they decide to turn their life around? Yeah, well, my version of that was sitting on my couch in 3-day-old sweatpants, eating stale cereal, and realizing, wow, Rick, you're a hot mess. Months had passed since the great betrayal, but instead of moving on, I was marinating in misery. Melissa and Greg were living rent-free in my head, and let me tell you, the rent was high. Something had to give. So I made the boldest move of my life. I quit my soul-sucking job. Not just a 2 weeks notice kind of quit, but a peace out, I'm never coming back kind of quit. I left the resignation email open for an hour, staring at it like it was a cliff I was about to jump off. Then I hit send. The rush was unreal. Freedom, baby. Next on the list, the house. The one Melissa and I had picked out together like it was our forever home. Yeah, forever lasted about as long as a bad reality show. I sold it faster than you can say new beginnings, packed up my stuff, and left town. No goodbye parties, no awkward small talk, just me, my car, and a U-Haul stuffed with enough baggage to make a therapist's head spin. I landed in a new city, a place where nobody knew me, my story, or the fact that my dad hit on my wife. Starting fresh felt weirdly empowering. I found a cheap studio apartment, which I'm pretty sure came with a complimentary rat infestation. No big deal. I wasn't aiming for luxury. I set up my little desk, dusted off my graphic design skills, and started freelancing. Was it glamorous? Absolutely not. But it was mine. And that was enough. Somewhere in the middle of designing logos for people who couldn't tell Helvetica from Times New Roman, I stumbled upon a support group. The flyer had this cheesy slogan, "Healing through connection." I almost laughed out loud, but curiosity and desperation got the better of me, and I showed up. At first it was awkward, sitting in a circle of strangers, sharing your darkest secrets. Not exactly my idea of a fun Tuesday night, but then this guy, Jake, shared how his best friend ran off with his fiancée, and suddenly, I didn't feel so alone. By the time Karen, yes, her actual name, detailed how her sister stole her husband, I realized betrayal wasn't just my thing. It was a whole club. Week by week, these people became my weird little therapy squad. We'd trade horror stories, laugh at the ridiculousness of our lives, and somehow, it helped. Hearing how others survived their dumpster fire moments made me think, hey, maybe I can survive mine too. So there I was, new city, new career, new people who got it. For the first time in forever, it felt like I was writing my own story. Not Melissa's, not Greg's, just mine. It was a Wednesday, just a regular, boring Wednesday. I was halfway through designing a logo for a vegan donut shop, don't ask, when my doorbell rang. Weird because I don't get visitors. Ever. My neighbor usually just slides complaints about my music under the door. So, naturally, I assumed it was a delivery guy dropping off the kitchen gadget I didn't need but definitely ordered at 2 a.m. I opened the door, and there she was. Melissa, my ex-wife. The human equivalent of a plot twist nobody asked for. She looked rough, like I've been crying in my car for 3 days. Rough. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, and her oversized sweater looked like it came from the clearance bin of a thrift store. Honestly, I almost didn't recognize her, the confident, polished Melissa I once knew. Gone. "Rick," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to talk." I stared at her, stunned. My first thought? How the hell did she find me? My second thought? Why does she look like a rejected extra from a sad indie film? "What are you doing here?" I finally managed to say, my tone as icy as the LaCroix in my fridge. She hesitated, her eyes darting everywhere but at me. I know I shouldn't have come, but I didn't know who else to turn to. "Not my problem," I said, leaning on the doorframe. "You lost the right to show up unannounced. Oh, I don't know, 2 years ago?" Her face crumpled like a poorly folded napkin. "I left Greg a long time ago." I laughed, like actually laughed. "Oh, wow. Should I be throwing you a parade? Is there a medal for finally dumping your ex-husband's father?" "Please, Rick," she said, her voice breaking. "I was wrong about everything. Greg manipulated me. He used me. I didn't know how to fix it." "Manipulated you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Melissa, you're a grown woman, not a puppet. Let's not rewrite history here." She flinched at my words, and for a split second I felt a pang of something. Pity, annoyance, maybe both. But I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me, not after what she did. "I destroyed us," she continued, her eyes finally meeting mine, "and I regret it every single day. You didn't deserve any of it." "Wow," I said, crossing my arms. "You figured that out all on your own? Truly groundbreaking stuff." She took a shaky breath, and for the first time, I noticed her hands trembling. "Greg, he's toxic, Rick. He used me to hurt you. I see that now." I didn't know what to say. My brain was a war zone. One side screaming, "Kick her out, now," while the other whispered, "Hear her out." My mouth, however, stayed glued shut. The silence stretched. Melissa looked at me like she was waiting for a sign. A word, a gesture, something. But I couldn't give her that. Not yet. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, disbelief, and maybe, just maybe, a sliver of empathy. "Rick, please," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "Just let me explain." I took a deep breath, my grip tightening on the doorframe. "Fine, you've got 5 minutes, but don't think for a second this changes anything." And with that, I stepped aside, letting the past walk back into my life. Not because I wanted to, but because some part of me needed to know how this story ended. You ever feel like you're starring in a soap opera you didn't sign up for? That's how I felt when I invited Melissa to dinner. Yeah, I know. Why even bother? But I wasn't about to slam the door and miss the chance to dig up some dirt. Call it strategy, call it curiosity, just don't call it forgiveness. We met at this cozy Italian place, the kind of spot where people propose, not plot. Melissa showed up looking like a kicked puppy, nervously fiddling with her menu while I pretended not to care. "So," I said, taking a sip of wine, "how's life treating you? Greg keeping busy?" Her face twitched, and I swear I saw her soul leave her body. He's gone," she muttered. "Gone?" I raised an eyebrow, leaning back like I wasn't already loving this. "Do tell." Apparently, Greg bolted the second their affair hit the family radar, left Melissa to deal with the fallout while he vanished like a magician with a guilt complex. She looked genuinely wrecked, but I wasn't about to hand her a tissue. Sounds like classic Greg, never around for the consequences. She spent the rest of dinner trying to apologize, about the affair, about life, about everything short of the weather. I kept it polite, but distant. Like a waiter at the end of a double shift, by the time the check came, I had what I needed. Greg had dumped her, and she was scrambling to survive. The next day, I went into full investigation mode. A couple of calls and some casual digging later, I had the whole picture. Greg didn't just ghost Melissa, he turned it into an upgrade. New car, new deals, and a new girlfriend who probably called him daddy, unironically. Meanwhile, Melissa was left holding the bag. No job, no friends, and no support. Greg, living his best life without a single consequence. It didn't make me pity her, but it definitely fueled my fire. Greg might have walked away untouched, but he wasn't getting away forever. Not if I had anything to say about it. The event was a black tie affair. You know, one of those swanky gatherings where everyone pretends they're richer and classier than they actually are. The kind of place Greg thrives in. He was being honored for some big real estate deal, and the room was filled with people who'd spent more on their outfits than I'd spent on rent in a year. Perfect stage for what I had planned. I showed up looking sharp, not for Greg, but for the satisfaction of knowing I was about to steal the show. Melissa had given me everything I needed. Her confession, Greg's manipulations, and a mountain of evidence that painted him as the scheming snake he truly was. Tonight wasn't about honoring Greg. Tonight was about exposing him. The MC eventually called Greg to the stage, and there he was, smiling like he'd won an Oscar. "Thank you," he started, with his fake humility cranked up to 11. "This means the world to me." I almost gagged. When he was done, the MC turned to me. "Now Greg's son Rick would like to say a few words." I took the mic, plastering on my best proud son smile. "Good evening, everyone," I started, my voice steady. "I'd like to thank you all for coming to celebrate my father's achievements. Greg has always been a man of ambition." I paused, watching the crowd nod along, clueless. Greg was standing to the side, looking smug. Not for long. "But ambition," I continued, "can come at a cost. And tonight, I think it's only fair to highlight the real Greg." The room went quiet, the kind of silence where you could hear someone choke on their champagne. Greg's smile froze, then wavered. Perfect. "Did you know," I said, pacing the stage like a talk show host, "that Greg here isn't just a real estate genius? Oh no, he's also a master manipulator, a homewrecker, and get this, a liar who throws people under the bus to save his own skin." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a fork. I swear I saw a lady clutch her pearls. Greg started to step forward, but I held up my hand. "No, Dad, you've had your time to speak. It's mine now." I pulled out printed copies of Melissa's messages and held them up like Exhibit A. For those of you wondering, yes, this is real. This is proof of my father's affair with my wife. And when things blew up, do you know what he did? He abandoned her, left her to deal with the fallout while he polished his image and moved on like nothing happened. I glanced at the crowd, locking eyes with a few people who looked genuinely horrified. You see, Greg doesn't just ruin lives, he moves on from them. And tonight, while you're all applauding him, I think you deserve to know who you're really applauding. By this point, Greg's face was bright red, and he looked like he was ready to charge the stage. The crowd was buzzing, whispers spreading like wildfire. Somewhere in the back, Melissa was standing, tears streaming down her face. I didn't look at her too long. This wasn't about her. I leaned into the mic for the grand finale. "Greg, you once told me family was everything. Funny how you forgot that when it suited you. Enjoy your award. You've earned it. For being the biggest fraud in the room." I dropped the mic, literally, and walked off the stage. The audience erupted, some in applause, others in outrage. Greg stood frozen, his perfect image shattered. And me, I walked out of that room with a sense of satisfaction money couldn't buy. Game, set, match. The event was over, and the chaos I'd unleashed was still rippling through the crowd. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting me like a well-earned reward. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. No more secrets, no more pretending. Greg was done. Checkmate. And honestly, I was feeling pretty damn good about it. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was. Melissa. Of course, she looked hesitant, her face still blotchy from crying during the fallout. She opened her mouth, but I beat her to it. "If you're here to thank me, spare me the speech," I said, hands in my pockets, already halfway out of the conversation. She blinked, taken aback. "Rick, please, I need you to know I'm grateful. What you did up there, it meant a lot." I tilted my head, giving her the kind of look you give someone when they're trying to sell you something you're not buying. Melissa, let me stop you right there. What I did tonight, that wasn't for you. Her face dropped like I'd just slapped her with reality. I don't understand. Of course you don't, I said, my voice calm, almost casual. See, you and Greg took a lot from me. My trust, my peace, my sense of self. But tonight, that was me taking it all back. This wasn't about defending you, and it sure as hell wasn't about trying to rekindle anything. It was about me finally reclaiming my dignity. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. Don't. I've already heard every excuse, every apology, every "it wasn't supposed to happen" sob story. And guess what? It doesn't matter anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, Melissa. You're still the face of the worst pain I've ever felt. And now, you're the face of the past I'm leaving behind. Her lip trembled, and for a split second I thought she might try to hug me or something equally dramatic. Instead, she just whispered, I thought maybe this could be the start of fixing things. Fixing what? I asked, my voice sharp. There's nothing left to fix. You can't glue together something that's been shattered 100 times. And frankly, I don't want to. Her tears started again, big fat drops rolling down her cheeks. But this time, I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything. Goodbye, Mom, Melissa, I said simply. No venom, no drama, just the truth. As I turned and walked away, I heard her sobbing behind me. I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I didn't feel tethered to her, to Greg, or to any of the mess they'd dragged me into. I was free, and as I reached the end of the block, a smile crept onto my face. The kind of smile you get when you realize the worst is over, and the best is finally within reach. My story was no longer about them, it was about me. Game over. I won.